choosing the wrong softie can really hold back your surfing fun and progression. So even though softies are fantastic for beginners, and they're a lot of fun for intermediates and advanced when you muck around with them in certain conditions, there's quite a number of differences in the construction, the cost, and of course sizing, and in particular there is one feature which you really should look for whenever you're choosing a soft top. That will make all the difference. So if you want to get the most out of your softboard and have the most fun, then stick around, because I'm going to share with you a couple of the specs, dimension, sizes, and also I'm going to reveal to you one board that I think could really fit the bill for most surfers. Introducing you to Mad Dog. This is called a Rincon 7.0, and I think I got this from Sideways Surf. They're cheap. They're listed at $220. I think I paid $160. That's really on the cheap end of softboards. And you can see it's got quite a wide nose and quite a slim tail. It's pretty thick, about 3.5 inches thick. And this board's copped a fair bit of punishment. It's had some people borrow it. You can see it's starting to get some little ripples and distortions. And whilst it's kind of fun in really crappy, junky waves, it does have limitations. There's this one limitation in particular, and let's have a look around this fin area. These fins, they're reasonably stiff, which is good, but they're just one piece, and you can see they bolt into the board here and there. There is zero options for you to change these fins other than replace them. There is the potential that they could come out of the board at some point, but it's going to be the limiting factor. So this board is probably a lot of fun for an absolute beginner, but if you're anywhere past beginner, you're going to get bored with this board. It's a little bit too big on the front, a little bit too narrow in the rear, and the fins have no versatility. It's also pretty much dead flat across the bottom here. Pretty tough, good value, but it's not going to last you forever. Apparently this board has 3 reinforced wooden stringers, which is pretty good, because I don't know if you saw some of those old videos, maybe 12 years ago, Jamie O'Brien was surfing his Costco boards and they were snapping. So probably the softboard manufacturers have realized that people are going to start trying these boards in more difficult conditions. So haven't been able to snap this yet, but at the same time, I'll be taking out other boards as soon as the waves get bigger. So a bargain, but it has limitations. So I kind of stopped riding this board and I started moving into the fiberglass boards instead. But then along came a board that caught my eye, so I switched it up a bit. This one is the Bat Board by Quiksilver, with a pretty racy bottom as well. And this one is 6'6" by 22 by 3 1/8. It's 53 litres in a 6'6" board. Actually, the very first softie that I bought was 6.5 feet, and I bought it for a friend of mine to learn to surf, and she's only quite small, but it wasn't anywhere near big enough. And I think this is a common mistake. If you're going to buy a board for a beginner, you have to go much bigger, at least 7'6" and probably 8 or 8.5 feet, because a lot of the surf school boards are going to be around 9 feet, because you need that size. Now this board at 3 1/8 is actually a reasonably slim softie. It's got a dual stringer. They cost about $550 on the website. I picked this one up when my local surf shop was closing at 50% off, so it was about $220. And also you'll notice the rails on it are actually quite slim, and that makes it a lot more fun for me as more of an intermediate surfer. These fins are quite stiff, but you'll notice there are screws here, and the screws are great because you can actually unscrew this and put an FCS1 fin set in here. So you could do a 2+1 or ride it as a thruster. But I don't change the fins on this, because if I'm taking this board out, generally it's going to be a closey outy shore break, and I'm not worried about getting hit by the board. Also, this board is really, really easy just to throw in a car or a surf bag or put on an e-bike and take down to the beach, and I'm not worried about damage. I'm not worried about it bumping around there. So it's very easy to transport. In fact, I have a friend who rides something like this from Catch Surf, And he takes it to the Maldives, the Philippines. He brought it out here. He just chucks it in his surf bag, never ever worried about airport damage. And he has the most fun. He's quite small and he uses it as a groveler and a muck around in the shore break in combination with his Firewire Seaside. I also like that it doesn't have any fin bolts on the top of the deck here, so it's quite a clean construction. And I think this fin box is something you really want to look for in a surfboard where you can change the fins. So I'm actually really happy with this board as a fun intermediate board, but it is not for a beginner. And I've even got a small daughter and I wouldn't even put her on this to learn. It's too small for her. She needs a bigger board. So let's talk about a bigger board that is really good for beginners. Well, here we are. Look at this beautiful little grab handle. I told my friend who's at Mick Fanning Softboards that I'm doing a softie video, and he said, let me send you one. So I said, okay, please do. So this arrived. It's a Mick Fanning. I was actually really excited to try this because I've been recommending this to my friends who are starting to surf. Why? Well, this one here is 7.6. It says 22 5/8 by 2 7/8, but I can tell you this is about 3.5 inches thick. I've measured it. It's thicker than that. It's 57.5 litres. It has the removable fins. These ones are very soft, which is great if you're learning to surf and you happen to bump into it. You're just not going to hurt yourself. But if you want to change these fins, they actually accept an FCS2 in this one. So I put some twins in it to have a muck around with it, and it was actually quite a lot of fun. Some power twins, just in the front, didn't worry about the back. I even measured the distance between the back of the board, and it was perfectly fine as a twin. So this also has a little bit of contour in the bottom, which is a kind of more advanced thing for a softboard. It's got a very mild V in it, a slight double concave. It's super, super mild though, but it is listed as a feature. What I do like is this handle. It makes it much easier to carry to the beach, and it's actually quite light. They call this a super soft. It does have the screws on the top, but I do like that the leg rope leash is separate from that. You also have the option to put it there. And if you had very, very short arms, I guess you could hold it this way from this side. And around here, you have to carry your board a long way to the point. So I think that would actually come in handy. Also, the rails on this are quite chunky, but they're not too boxy. They're not as boxy as the Mad Dog here. So also you'll notice the nose is a little bit narrower than the Mad Dog, and the tail is a bit wider. What that means is you're going to get plenty of speed off this tail, and it's not too wide. It can still handle some bigger waves. So I took this out a few times in pretty subpar waves, and it was so easy to paddle around. And you'll notice I still wax my softboard. I still think that's a good idea because I don't want to be doing the splits or stretching a muscle, so I still wax it up. And I was actually very impressed. These boards retail for about $550, so it's about the same price as this Quiksilver. It is more than the Rincon. However, I'd say the construction here, it's got a composite stringer. It has quite a lot of tech going on in there. In fact, I'll show you the tech in just a moment. This thing came with it, and the tech is through the roof, right? It's got a Tech Skin High Density EVA. So you've got 2 layers of fiberglass, and underneath that is advanced bio epoxy lamination, so it's recyclable apparently. It's got a T-Rex carbon stringer, and then you've got fiberglass again, and then the Tex Skin. So essentially, it is a fiberglass board with a soft skin, but it's very light. I think it is better quality than the lower cost softie, and it's a better size for a beginner than the smaller boards that cost a similar amount. I think this is a really good value for how much they're asking for it. When I got my box from the delivery driver, there was another box, and inside that box was this board, and this one is a Mick Fanning Beastie Epoxy Lamb. Sounds pretty cool. You'll probably immediately notice it doesn't have the bolts for the fins, and if I flip this over, you'll see that it has these beautiful Futures slots, and if you've watched any of my videos, you know how much I love Futures. It comes with these Futures Safety F8, and these are quite stiff, but they're also pretty soft on the skin. So these are an ideal intermediate fin, and you can take these fins out and install any Futures setup. You could do 2+1, you could have twins, you could have a different type of thruster. You can put in a G10 fiberglass if you want, and I think I probably will. So this one here is thinner, you'll see. It has the same dimensions here. It says 7/6, 22 and 5/8, 2 and 7/8. I measure this at 3 and 1/8, so it's thinner than the Super Soft. It also has more defined rails, and you can't feel it over the video, but this is a kilogram heavier. It feels more like it's halfway to a fiberglass board, and I think that's the market. This is not the beginner one, although if you were a beginner you could use this. This is the one you get if you are an intermediate and above and you want a board that you're not going to grow sick and tired of. Because I can tell you the biggest difference is being able to change the fins and having this Futures setup here, and the thinner rails and the weight of the board. And I'm not afraid of a heavier board. A heavier board gives you momentum. If you can get it up and running, it will power through flat spots. I took this board out in some really crappy waist to chest high waves, and it paddled like a dream. You can duck dive it at my weight. This one's 7/6. They come in all different sizes. In terms of cost, they do range in cost depending on size, but I think this one's about $730. So it's still a lot cheaper than a fiberglass board, but you're not going to get as easily injured on this board. It will transport easier. Of course, don't leave it in the sun, but it's great to have in the car, and it's something that you could share with someone and not be too precious about them bashing it around, because it is made strong. Let's have a look at the tech on this one, because it also came with a tech guide. So here's the epoxy lamb tech. It's got a XPE deck skin, then it's got 4-ounce E-glass, a couple of layers of that, and then you've got your PE bonding sandwich layer, and then you have a bamboo stringer. So it's got this wooden stringer, and you've got 100% recyclable EPS core, and then you've got 4-ounce glass, and then a PE bonding sandwich layer, and then the HDPE sanded bottom skin. This board also has that slight single to double concave, so there is a bit of contour in the bottom, which makes a huge difference between this and a very low cost board. This is why it's starting to bridge the gap between a traditional softie and a fiberglass board. So it's a very good option to have if you just want something really low stress and is great value for money. So quick recap, I think Mick Fanning boards are good quality, having ridden the Super Soft and the Epoxy Lamb a number of times each. The Super Soft is great if you're a beginner. You've got that grab handle, it's a kilogram lighter, it's a little bit thicker, and it has quite soft fins. If you're an intermediate or more advanced, then I would go with the Epoxy Lamb, because it costs a little more, but it has more refined rails, it has a little more weight to the board, it has better fin choices for you, and it's going to last you longer without getting bored. So it's a kind of board that will last infinitely longer than a very low cost board. At some point you're going to probably give away. And if you are very advanced, just go shorter, and if you're just starting out, go bigger. And I wouldn't go much shorter than 6 feet. If you're a big person, maybe you can do 5 something if you're shorter. And if you're a beginner, I wouldn't really go below 7'6", but probably 8 foot plus would be a really good starting range. And this model's the Beastie. Now they do have different models, so if you're very advanced, have a look at a model called Little Marley, because that's going to give you heaps of fun in the shore break. And for the rest of us, Beastie is a great choice.